got chops. But when you bring Mike G on, the great Mike G, now I feel like I'm a walk-on left tackle trying to block Myles Garrett off the edge with Mike Gittens.
Oh man, yeah, you got too much.
He moved back down from our nation's capital back to Columbus because Doug, his dad was in the Army 30 years.
Wow.
And so I that Fort Benning, I'm gonna tell you, I met Mike at Media Days last year over in Atlanta, and honestly, I thought you were one of the guys running CBS. I thought you were one of their executives, and because you were asking questions that were so like analytical, and I was like, wow. I mean, this guy, and you've got that Barry White voice. I mean, it's just it's so smooth, and I was going, I got to meet this guy, and then I was like, he's an Auburn guy, and I was like, oh, this is just, it doesn't get much better than that.
I think it is an extreme privilege to get to go to SEC Media Days and to be able to ask questions. And so whenever given a chance, you want to ask a good question, you want to ask a memorable question, and you want to ask a question that gives fans a window into what's happening with that team and with that coach. And so we were there all week, and we got to ask a number of questions to a number of coaches. I think probably the most memorable moment, I asked Saban how he stays ahead of the coaching curve with so many good coaches coming in and out. How do you stay ahead? I like to double up, and I asked him, I said, hey, do you miss Gus at all? And he smirked at me, and he said, he beat us more than I would have liked. So he paid Gus quite the compliment. It was a moment, and then I got on Twitter, and the question had gone viral. So listen, SEC.
That was a great question. Great question.
Yeah, listen, SEC Media Days is fun. I think we're in Nashville this year.
Yeah.
We're in Nashville this year, so that should be a blast. I can't wait to get up there.
It's going to be fun. The whole event is really fun, and just all the people that are there, and you do learn a lot. But some of the coaches were real quick. I think, God, we're going to miss him. Mike Leach gets up there in 3 or 4 seconds and goes, any questions? That was kind of like the old Saturday Night Live skit with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, Knights of Columbus meeting. Any old business? Any new business? All right, meeting's adjourned. And they just started drinking, having a good time. But Mike, I'll let everybody start asking questions here. We just do this round table kind of Hollywood Squares format. So, Doug, I know you want to get started. Batter up a 6'1" sophomore from Vestavia, Alabama, Doug Dean in the box.
If only I were 6'1". Mike, first of all, again, on a serious note, I deeply, having been in the podcast game for a few years and realizing, folks at home, it is not as easy to produce as it may look. And the quality of the War Report, just beautiful. By the way, to some dude in East Tennessee, it's not the War Report. We don't spell it that way down here. It's the rapport, the great rapport that
Thank you for that. I stopped correcting people.
I know. I like to play on phonics there, but you just do a magnificent job, not only just the banter between you and your co-host, but the unbelievable guests you have on. I will warm you up with a pretty pregnant question that's probably on the mind of any good Auburn fan, or for that matter, other SEC fans. And it's the sort of twofold question here. So far anyway, the lack of the clearly elite QB, arguably, I mean, they can surprise you just because they haven't performed yet, but like the kid at Oregon State, but that they haven't, the portal is not littered with obvious go get them quarterbacks, and of course complicated for Hugh Freeze by the fact that you really can't go after an SEC QB because the odds of getting a waiver, if you study those rules about well-being and all, are not great. But if you're Hugh Freeze right now, arguably Robbie Ashford, I guess, and I don't want to leave out Guerin, I'm probably leaving TJ out. Maybe that's unfair, but you might have better quarterbacks on our roster than sit in the portal right now. So if that were the case, Hugh's not going to just take a warm body. Is it? Comment on where you think Hugh Freeze's head is as he tries to evaluate all that.
I think he'll bring somebody in. And the reason I think he'll bring somebody in is because he's going to lose a quarterback. The 3 guys they have in there, they're not all going to be here in about a week. right? My vote is for TJ Finley. That leaves you with 2 quarterbacks. And, in Brian Harson's first year, we saw how disastrous it can be to only have 2 quarterbacks. By the time they got to the Iron Bowl, if they had a viable third option, we would have seen them. Instead, they had to send TJ Finley out there on one leg, and they lost in 4 overtimes. So having more than one quarterback that can do the job, guys, over half of the teams in the SEC went to QB2 for significant time last year. Yeah. In Alabama, Jalen Milroe had to come in and win a game last year. So if you don't have at least two guys that can do the job and a manageable third, you're asking for trouble in this league. Injuries happen, and they're pretty common. Now, in terms of what you're saying about bringing in a warm body, right? This has been my thought is that the messaging from Hugh Freeze in terms of the talent level that's currently on the team has not been great. And if I had to critique him on anything, I would say when you are constantly getting in front of the media, and some of the media members are to blame for this because they're always asking, who are you going to get from the portal? Instead of asking questions about how are you going to develop the guys that you have.
Who are you developing?
Right. Yeah. And so all spring, all we heard was, we got to recruit. We got to recruit. Now, of course you have to recruit. But I thought the messaging maybe was a little discouraging for the guys who were already on the team. You're not going to get a whole team full of guys from the portal in one offseason. So if you're gonna win games, you got to win games with primarily the guys you have. And I want to hear more about the plan. And I think if you're a player, one of the questions I would ask you, Freeze, is, when we got a chance to sit down with Brian Harsin after post spring, they had one-on-ones with each player, head coach, position coach. Here's where you're at, right? Anybody who had a chance to play, here's where you're at. I've asked Hugh Freeze, have you gotten to know these guys yet? Like, have you sat down with them yet? And it doesn't seem like that's happened quite yet, right? And if it has, he hasn't told us. So imagine, guys, if you're a player and you have not talked to your head coach, but when a media member asks your coach a question about you, all you're hearing is, we got to bring in talent. Mm-hmm. That's not a great message. And so at the end of spring, finally, we heard from Hugh Freeze about the quarterback room specifically. I think we can win some games with the guys that we have. Robbie Ashford has made great strides. He's been fun to coach. He's been coachable. And I'm like, okay, right? Like, finally, we heard something positive about somebody in the room. Yeah. Because you're getting ready to lose somebody, right? TJ got on camera and said, I don't know if I'll stay if they bring in a QB. Right. And a lot of people were just like, why would he say that? And I'm like, well, what's he going to say? I think he's got 1 year left to play. He can't afford to sit behind somebody else. So, yeah, if they bring somebody else in, he's not going to be in a 4-man battle for the starting spot. Yeah. Go someplace and put something on tape.
And as you know, he's willing to do that, having left LSU to go to Auburn. This is not something that's foreign to him.
Right. He graduates this summer, so he would have another freebie transfer. So as a young man's got to do what makes sense for him. So, I mean, listen, Robbie Ashford, you got to remember about almost everybody that's in this quarterback room right now, none of them have received proper coaching. Right. Absolutely. So we have no clue what they can do. Right. TJ was in a mess of a situation at LSU. I mean, think about it. And they fired their coach. And then he came to another situation where they fired the coach midseason. Yeah. They had no clue what they were doing offensively. They were supposed to bring in Austin Davis. When that fell apart, there was no backup plan.
Yeah, he's got the physical talent. He absolutely has the physical attributes.
Yeah, Robbie Ashford, I mean, it was a mess up there at Oregon with Cristobal. Yeah. So, he transferred out of here. He comes down here with Harston. Again, he's playing under the same coaching. Eric Kiesau is the biggest mess of a coach I think that I've seen hired at Auburn in quite some time, right? He was not good, guys. He just wasn't good.
Well, Mike, that was the whole culture that dissolved. I mean, as an outsider, as an LSU fan, looking at what happened to Auburn, the culture dissolved so quickly under Harsin. What do you see Hugh Freeze? What are the steps that he has to take to get that Auburn culture back? Because I'm telling you, it was like a train wreck watching it. And my Auburn buddies that are on the show that I'm on with all the time, everybody saw it. I mean, anybody that was an Auburn man saw this happening. And he got that extra year, which only prolonged the agony. Instead of peeling the Band-Aid off real quick, it let it drift on. So Hugh Freeze I think before the quarterback room, he's got a culture to have to rebuild.
Yeah, culture. It's funny, we hear that word a lot, especially in the offseason. What's the team culture going to be like? The first and foremost, you have to develop leaders, right? And your leaders have to push that culture. So, Hugh Freeze has to identify his leaders, the guys who other guys listen to on the team. I'm not sure he's quite done that yet. I think that most guys are worried about, am I gonna play? Am I gonna start? If I were Hugh Freeze, I'd be looking, and this is why the couple guys that he is solid about, you need them to lead. Jarquez Hunter, he has already said Jarquez Hunter is the best back he's ever coached.
Yeah.
And I was like, I asked him the question to see if he was gonna, give us some bull coach speak on Jarquez, and he came right out, and I was happy to hear him say Jarquez Hunter is a dude. He's the guy, right? He mentioned some guys at offensive line. He talked about Justin Rogers, Tate Johnson. He talked about DJ James. Guys who we already know are going to be the guys. So don't feed us lines about competition when we know they're the best already, right? Like, we don't need that. But ultimately, the culture. Hugh Freeze is, he's a deeply religious man. And I think that there's a desire to do things a certain way and have kids carry themselves a certain way. He's got a standard for behavior that he wants to uphold. Harston did as well, but he never related to the kids, and there was a strong feeling like he's from the North, we're from the South. This guy doesn't get us, right? And in my talks with Harston, having grown up some in the South but lived all over the world, I can understand why a lot of kids could not relate to him. Yeah. I'd have a problem. I love talking Harston.
Coach Lally, remember when we met with Coach Lally before the LSU game that night? He alluded to that. He goes, it's almost a lack of communication between the coaching staff and the kids that were on Auburn's team last year.
And not only that, guys, in order to, I'm going to be snarky here because I promised Rob I'd quit dogging Harsin with the new year, and I've broken that. I might as well keep breaking it. But in order to not get along well, to not connect with a mom or a dad and a recruit, you actually have to be in the house of that mom and dad of the recruit. And it's a lot of evidence that Harsin just didn't like recruiting. Good grief.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they were out recruiting, but, I think there was a feeling that they could outdevelop other coaches in this league. And you're not going to do that, man.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, let me tell you something. I mean, if you've got the best process of all time, sure. But I'm not sure Harsin had that. He couldn't even find an OC. You're not going to outdevelop Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. You're just not. And now you're not going to outdevelop Brian Kelly because those guys are bringing in. I mean, if you look at
talent,
the talent, Auburn was one of only in Gus's last recruiting class, it was ranked 7th. It was a composite 7th ranked class. And they were the only SEC team in the top 10. There were 6 of them that didn't have a single 5-star on the roster. And Auburn has just failed at getting top talent to come to the Plains. So guys that can't miss. It's funny. Every time Auburn talks about bringing in a quarterback, they're like, "Oh, if we bring this guy in, this guy isn't going to stay." This isn't a conversation that happens at Georgia and Alabama. It's not. It's not a conversation that happens at Oklahoma. It's not a conversation that happens at USC, right? Those guys. It seems like there's a clearer message to their players that, okay, if you do all the things that you are supposed to do, you're next man up.
Yeah.
Right? When Jalen Hurts, Tua came in, he knew he was the heir apparent. Yeah. Mac Jones didn't have to guess about whether he was taking
these thoughts real quick. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back, keep on schedule. Yeah. I want to hear this, Mike. So we're going to be right back with Mike G, Doug Dean, Frank Duffy on Sidelines after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with this distinguished round table of some very scholarly types on here. Mike G., you were on a roll before the break. Keep rolling.
Well, kind of wrap it up. I'm just saying, the better programs don't worry about losing their backup just because they brought in another quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. They begin a pipeline of talent, and it's clear who the next guy who's going to get his shot is, at least. Now, if that guy gets his shot and he doesn't live up to the potential, then of course you move on to the next guy. But this whole thing where there's a brand new battle every spring for who's going to be the starting quarterback is not a winning formula. It's just not. I'm telling you. Bryce Young knew he was next man up before he had played it down. He knew he was going to play.
Yeah.
When you
What
bring
did Stetson Bennett 2 years ago? Ha ha.
Well, I'll tell you, but going into that second championship season, I asked Kirby Smart at Media Days, hey, listen, are you guys having a real quarterback battle or is Stetson already your guy? He said, Stetson's our guy.
Yeah.
He earned it. Now, if he didn't go out there and perform, sure, he would have replaced him. But they didn't even pretend they were having a QB battle last spring. So
what's the old saying, when you got two quarterbacks, you got none?
You got none, right. So I just think Auburn, that's where Auburn needs to be. You need to have one that's clearly your starter. Yeah. That guy needs to make it a whole season. And then you need to get into a groove where it's like guys don't mind sitting and waiting.
Maybe Walker White will be that guy in a couple of years, Mike.
Well,
maybe.
But even Robbie Ashford, look, I sat with Doug at the LSU Auburn game, and that kid played a great first half against LSU. I mean, he was hitting guys downfield, and it was like Harsin and their offensive staff did not put him in a position to win that ball game. That turnover down low, there was no reason for that at the end of the first half.
Right.
So he's got talent. JT's got talent. They got to fix on one. And then they got to go behind him, and that's your quarterback going forward. Sooner than later.
Yeah. I think Robbie Ashford is supremely talented, and I would like to see him in a competent system, right? Yeah. I mean, I hope Hugh Freeze's system is just more competent. A good system will cover a multitude of sins on offense.
Yeah, give the kid some help. Don't hang him out there on a swing pass when wasn't one needed. It's ridiculous.
Mike, I've got kind of a strategic what if. Okay. And it surrounds both offensive philosophy, the what if being, what will be the mind of Hugh Freeze. Do I think win now? However that's required, or do I build systems that may not be perfect for this roster, especially quarterback, arguably, depending on if they bring everyone's favorite quarterback, Grayson McCall, in from Coastal Carolina. I discount those rumors, but you never know. Here's the what if, and you're the right guy to try to tackle it. Let's say for grins right now that Robbie Ashford, we don't bring anybody in from the portal because there's not a clear improvement. I don't think that's the end of the world, by the way. And then Robbie makes modest improvement at throwing accuracy, at improving that part of his game. We already know what he can do with mobility and extending plays and design run plays, but he doesn't significantly show improvement in the passing game. Does Hugh Freeze say, look, it's not what I want to run, Philip Montgomery and I, but in order to have a chance to win 7-8, much less likely 9-game ceiling, I'm going to build this offense to lean far more heavy on the run. I may even ask Robbie to do read option, and it has similarities to that 2013 offense. But long term, I really don't want to do that. Do you think Hugh Freeze will try to run his system anyway with Robbie's limitations, or will he mold it just for this coming season more around Robbie's likely abilities?
I think that he'll run what works, right? So if they're run blocking at a high level, I think you will see them keep the ball on the ground and out of harm's way more. Because ultimately, if you can control the clock, you can control a lot of things in college football. But I do not expect him to shove a square peg down a round hole, because the guy who is possibly backing him up doesn't have a lot of real game experience. So if you want to go to him, I think that's fine. And I think, Robbie's not playing well. He'll definitely get a shot. But I expect Hugh Freeze to adapt to what the offense does well, because in this discussion, you got to factor in, what is this offensive line going to do? Are they going to be better at pass blocking than they have been the last couple of years? If they're not, you might need to mash on the ground, because if your quarterback is running for his life, that's not a good prospect. So I think that Hugh Freeze's ideal scenario is that Robbie Ashford gets better at short to intermediate passes than he has. Right. He was, as you mentioned, he was excellent throwing the ball down the field last year.
Yeah, great long game.
Yeah, but in short to intermediate, he lacked touch on those throws. And for what it's worth, we know he played with a hurt shoulder, with a sprained AC joint most of the season last year. They didn't reveal it until the end of the year, but hopefully a healthy Robbie Ashford can make a higher percentage of those short passes, and hit guys in stride, and we can see what they got. From a receiving standpoint, I think they got some guys that can be dangerous this year. So,
well, Mike, wins and losses come based on what you do on the line of scrimmage. What do you see Auburn's offensive line being able to do to give Ashford or JT the time to be back there? And like you were talking, he was running for his life a lot of games last year. What do you see for the offensive line for Auburn?
Well, mid-spring, the offensive line started dominating. They dominated the scrimmage. They clearly won 8A. I think that the offensive line has nowhere to go but up, because they were all-time bad the last two. Like, it would be hard. I mean, the only way you could be worse is to just not put one out there. Let the quarterback run from defensive guys. So I like the prospects of them improving. We ask questions about strength and conditioning all the time when it comes to these guys. We're like, hey, what are you guys doing in the weight room? And we ask the players a lot. Whenever you change coaches, Cole Kublik came on our show and we talked about his strength and conditioning coach. His name was Coach Kevin Yoxel. Did not like he didn't like bench pressing. There were some things he didn't like, and Cole was upset because he was like, "Man, my bench went down like 100 pounds under Coach Yox. I hated it." Right, but he did say that conditioning, I think, is probably the most important thing for an offensive lineman these days. Right, Gus liked his linemen made small and fast. I just think that fit his system, and what Hugh Freeze is doing, now these guys it's so crazy what these guys are. They're so big and they're so fast these days because sports nutrition has come so far, and they have access to tools and knowledge that old players 20 years ago didn't have. So you need guys who are big and can run, and I think that Auburn has that. It's just, can they play as a unit and can they stay healthy? Right, physically, I believe they have the guys that can do the job, but if you're going to call plays, which is this frustrated me about Harsin and Keysal, if you're going to call plays that require these guys to block for 4 or 5 seconds, it's just not going to be, unless you have the greatest offensive line of all time, or a quarterback that can just really bail you out all the time, like Bryce Young, because the old line he played behind the last 2 years was awful. They were one of the worst I've ever seen. Right. And nobody talks about it because he was so good. If Auburn, I don't know, we got a quarterback like that, so I think the line needs to play a lot better.
Bryce won that. Bryce won that Texas game on a single play, going right, forcing that rush in or corner rusher to miss.
I was just about to say exactly that. They don't beat Texas without Bryce Young.
Right,
Mike. I was talking to Kevin Yoxel one time in the weight room at Auburn down there, and I remember that exactly what you said. I said something about bench press and what do you look for in strength and conditioning? Because I mean, And he said, look, football is a game that's played on your feet. Okay.
Yeah.
He goes, so bench press, that's important and all, but it's legs. And I remember former Auburn defensive coordinator and defensive line coach Wayne Hall. He used to say, look, man, football's played on your feet too. He goes, it's leg drive. And go back 25, 30 years ago, all we heard about was our whole offensive line benches 400 or better. And that's just part of it. I will say this about the strength and conditioning. I think Auburn in the last decade has had some really weak teams when compared to Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Ole Miss and Mississippi State dominating on that line of scrimmage. And you know, we talk with Jason Caldwell a lot, and he's chronicled the last 5-6 years. Auburn's signing of offensive linemen was so much lower than our big rivals. And you're right. The only way it could have been worse is to just not put an offensive line on the field.
Yeah,
it was,
sure.
I hate to say it, but you got to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I went to a good friend of mine in college. His name was King Dunlap. He played offensive line for Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
From Brentwood Academy.
When I was living in Phoenix, I would go out to San Diego and visit him while he was playing with the Chargers. And every once in a while I was there, we would be in the Chargers weight room in their facility. And I just hey, if I'm here, I'm just going to get a workout in while I'm on vacation. And so I'm on the bench press. And at the time, I can't do this anymore, but now I probably am like 315 on the bar.
Wow.
And King and Keenan Allen come over. And they were like, hey, so during your day, when are you ever on your back doing this with 315 pounds? All right. And I'm like, well, never, not unless I'm in here. And they're like, you don't really need to do that because when we retire, we're not doing it. And I mean, it completely changed the way I thought about my workouts. You know, I used to bench press like it was a sport. And they're saying, hey, man, functional strength is more important to somebody who is everyday life, because when these guys retire, the first thing they do, especially if you're a lineman, is they drop 80 to 100 pounds. Yeah. And they get to a more livable weight. And so understanding what your body needs to do certain things is super important, especially for an offensive lineman. That's why we don't see wide receivers do bench press at the combine. You know, they don't need that sort of strength. They don't. It's nice if you have it, but they don't need that sort of strength. They need to be pliable and nimble and fast. So, hopefully Hugh Freeze has a good plan for these guys in the weight room and nutritionally as well, too, because you're going to need every edge you can in this league to get ahead and to beat the better coaches. So, listen, if you can't out-coach them, right, or out-recruit them, you can out-game plan them, you can out-work them, you can out-science them. There are a lot of other things that you can do to help close that gap. And then if you can make the right decisions in the closing moments of a game, hopefully you can get the win.
Well, like you said, bringing in the talent to begin with makes it a hell of a lot easier. Fine tweaking, right?
Mike's made this point. I just want to underscore it because I think it's a big deal. Whatever your strength and conditioning philosophy is going to be, especially with offensive linemen, then make sure you stick with the philosophy offensively that it was built for. Only Gus Malzahn, bless him, would have his strength and conditioning guy build these lean, faster guys that could handle a large number of plays during a game. And it's built for tempo and hurry up, no huddle. And then he goes out and gets away from running tempo with those smaller O-line. Right. That's a recipe for disaster. And I think to Cole Kublik's point, maybe these are college kids and they have preferences about how to work out. Maybe not all of it is how to win games. Maybe some of them just believe if they're building bigger pec muscles, Duff, would help them in their nightlife in college.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
At the War Eagle Supper Club.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'll tell you, the college student, the average college athlete these days has so many resources available to them. Yeah. Especially at an SEC school. I mean, they have nutrition plans. They've got meal halls. They've got
the training tables.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't been to that $90 million performance center, it is gorgeous. It's a thing of beauty. I mean, they have access to state-of-the-art equipment. It is They have every advantage. They just have to take advantage of it, and they need coaches who can guide them through that process to make sure that they get the max potential out of what they're doing. Because Auburn has everything, right? They just need to you get your fair share of the players. What was it last year? I mean, one of the greatest recruiting in-state recruiting cycles ever.
Opportunity.
So much talent in state, and they just didn't win enough of those guys. Yeah. It's hard, man. It's hard to win when you're just handing all the best players to Saban. So,
Mike, let me ask you this. You're there in Phoenix City, Columbus, and I mean, having worked there and lived there 2.5 years, and I've been down there 5 times the last couple of years, 5 or 6 times, and I'll be down there. Might even stop on the way back from Atlanta this week. Phoenix City Central. Mark Murphy told me a couple of years ago, he said, Rob, there's no less than 30 D1 prospects on that roster. And a lot of people worried when Bo Nix went out to Oregon, and our friend Mike Dean, who's on the show with us several times a week, his son's on the staff there with Dan Lanning. They love Bo Nix, okay? They love him. But people worried, Patrick Nix will never help. Patrick Nix is a first-class guy. He's a damn good Auburn man. I like him. I don't know if you know him or not, but I'm a fan of his. And he has done nothing but, hey, come over here. But they had to literally beg Auburn, please get someone. Man, when I worked at Channel 3, we covered – Auburn was the local school. I mean, we did Joe Champion's basketball show Sunday afternoons. And then they would cover Georgia a few times a year. But it was Auburn. I mean, you're 35 minutes.
Y'all own Troup County and LaGrange in that area.
Well,
absolutely.
But Columbus is where they got to get back into. And Mike G is swinging the big stick, and Doug Dean has said, "You have an go evangelize." There's so much talent in the Bi-Cities, just at Phoenix City Central. I mean, Mike, that right there is enough. Clemson is last year. You're right. There were 22 4-stars in Alabama. 7 5-stars. Clemson and Penn State out-recruited Auburn for the top studs in Alabama. As Coach Dye always said, the big dogs walk late, but Auburn wasn't even letting the dog out.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Too much talent has gotten out of Central Phoenix City and not landed at Auburn. It almost doesn't make any sense. Some of the legendary high schools over here, Shaw High School, they had a pretty legendary coach there, Coach Charles Flowers, Carver High School. These, just amazing kids have come out of here, and they're not choosing Auburn, and so they have to fix that, right? Yeah. A lot of these, a lot of the other schools are just doing a better job selling their school culture, right? And what it's going to be like, and part of it too is kids are not as afraid as they were to move away from home. So, if you want to get away from home and you live in Phoenix City, right? The trip up to Auburn is 30 minutes. It may not be far enough for you.
Not going to get homesick.
Right. You're definitely not going to get homesick from Auburn. But
come on.
I will tell you that, now, I might be the wrong one to speak on Patrick Nix. We were pretty critical of Bo during his time here, so I don't know if he likes me. But I'll tell you, there was a hold that thought. Family.
Hold that thought. We want to come back for a few more minutes. I know you've been long, but we got this is great stuff, and it's covering a lot of ground. And I'm getting a lot of questions from people. I mean, Curtis Lowe's got a question for you when we come back. Mike G, Doug Dean, Frank Duffy, Rob Browne, right after this.
Hey, y'all. It's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn. Just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Say something real quick. A Red River Ford Toyota over in Wynne, Arkansas. They're getting a lot of inventory in because of the tornado that was 3 weeks ago yesterday. So if you are looking to buy a new car, truck, SUV, whatever, get over to Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. They deliver anywhere. They go all over the country. You see those trucks on the interstate, that's them, Red River Ford Toyota. They've got a lot of Toyota trucks, a lot of Fords, redriverfordtoyota.com. Rusty Howard, Justin Wynn, Greg, everybody's over there today. Service department open till 12:30 p.m. on Saturdays. Mike G, you're on a roll. I just think that the talent right there around Auburn, if you can't win 8 or 9 games a year, you're not asking for the order. I mean, you know about how many times do you hear a salesman hang up the phone and not ask for the order? You know, you got to ask for that order.
Yeah, I think that, there was a whole contingent of fans that just was like, Gus never had a losing season, blah, 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 right? Gus. And my thing was, listen, man, I think Gus was a solid coach, but he couldn't get over the hump. And so if your goal is 8 games, he's your perfect coach.
Yeah.
But with some of the talent, with the classes that he had rated, guys, under Gus, Auburn was the only school in the playoff era to average a top 10 class, but not make the playoff.
Correct.
Everybody else who averaged a top 10 class made the playoff. He had one legitimate shot at it in 2017, and they blew it in the rematch against Georgia in the SEC championship game. So
he was the Mark Richt.
Exactly. And Richt, so they moved on. That was the example I was going to use. Richt, they moved on from Richt. He was a great coach. He was a good guy, too. But
tough to do, but
they wanted to get over the hump, right?
Yeah.
So they went out, they hired Kirby Smart, and they gave him ample time to do the job, and he got them over the hump. So, they've been to 3 championship games under Smart?
Correct.
And they won 2 of them.
1, 2.
Yep. And the one they lost was an epic.
Yeah.
It was an epic battle.
Won it.
Yeah. So I think that what Auburn is in search of is they're in search of that coach that will get them over the hump, over that 8 or 9. Because listen, I expect Hugh Freeze to win 8 games this season. I think that's a reasonable expectation with the players that he has, because his system should be an improvement. Effort from the players should be an improvement if they're bought in. Everything should be better, right? They already have better communication with players and players' families, and and with coaches. I think there's more synergy on the staff than there was under Hartson, it should just all be better. I think they really had to try to sink the ship. They were stubborn. Now I'll tell you this: we were pretty plugged in. I was pretty plugged into what was going on last year, and going into that Missouri game where Missouri literally fumbled the game back to Auburn. Going into that game, I talked to a certain player and I said, well, "How do you feel about the offensive game plan?" And he said, "Mike, it's trash. We're doing the same thing we did the first couple games." And it looked like it on the field. So going into LSU, I said, "Hey, how do you feel about this? Are they shifting gears yet?" And he said, "Man, we're flipping it up completely."
Yeah,
and
it was.
Everybody's bought in.
I was like, guard.
Yeah, I was like, okay, let's see what this looks like. And Robbie Ashford ended up having his best game of the throwing of the year in that game. So I was like, these players were really plugged in. And, when a player tells me that the game plan is terrible before a game and then it goes out and it looks like it did against Missouri, I think these players know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so for some reason, the head coach didn't see it. What you hope here is that you hope you don't. I hope this year I don't have any players coming back to me telling me it's going to suck on Saturday. When the player's already there in his mind, wow.
Harsin was stubborn to a fault. It didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And every Auburn guy knew it. It wasn't like, this was a mystery.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Tell me that is it just me, or was it surrealistic to be watching Auburn incompetence, coaching incompetence up close and personal, even as you're hearing the same head coach produce podcasts to tell us about leadership. I mean, you just can't make this up. Hey, I wanted to ask you, Mike, we've been kind of Auburn centric because there's a lot of knowledge around there, but I've been staring 45 minutes now at Duffy's LSU logo, which is burning my retinas, I might add.
Okay.
Hey, man, if you can pull off yellow, brother, you got it. Not many men can pull this off.
No, here's obviously, Mike, chalk is Georgia winning the East. That's almost go ahead and give it to them practically. And then probably Alabama, the West. But if you step away from those easy picks and likely correct picks, do you see somebody, and I think this might make Duffy happy if I had to guess, who do you see as a surprise team to keep an eye on to challenge those two divisional contenders?
I think it's got to be LSU. And here's what I've told people about LSU all season, last season. There are 5 stars all over that team.
Yes, sir.
Like, despite the fact that they've kind of underperformed the talent, if you get a coach who can come in there and organize the chaos, and Brian Kelly did a pretty good job of it. Listen, I'm not a Brian Kelly fan, but he can coach.
Thank you, baby.
He can definitely coach. And I think you have to keep an eye on LSU. They have recruited at a really high level over the last, 4 or 5 years, and they're not devoid of talent. It's just been system. Right after Joe Brady left and Ed O got fired, you could see it kind of fall apart.
It was a train wreck.
It was a train wreck, right? And so coaching matters, man. Even it just shows you, like, if you have all the best recruits, and if you can't coach, you can run a program into the ground. I just think, Brian Kelly is going to do the minimum to get them to 9 games, and whether they win the West or not will be about those few games that can he get them over the hump, because you do have to play Bama every year. Right. And, if you can win those games and not lose inexplicable games, then they've got a shot. On the East side, I think it's clearly Tennessee and behind them, Florida. Right. Josh Heupel has done a great job with that program. Resurgent passing game. Hendon Hooker, I was one of his biggest fans this year. I loved watching him play football. Mm-hmm. And I was sad when he got hurt near the end of the season. But I think you have to look at Tennessee and say, hey, again, a program, look what Heupel was just able to come in and do in a couple of years with that program. And it makes you wonder how bad the last guy was that they couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
He comes in and they started the season with Joe Milton, and then that 1 year, and then Hooker comes in and he just is tearing it up. He looks like a Heisman candidate.
Yeah.
Well, that guy's sitting on the bench.
So he was unstoppable. Went through us like a hot knife through a butter. I think the critical year this year is what's going to happen in Florida. Florida's at a crossroads in their program. Let me tell you something. They don't write this. Florida's looking at Tennessee like Tennessee was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what's staring out at Florida if they don't get this right.
You got to add the Aggies to crossroads, Duff.
Well,
yeah. Well,
Mike, you talk about doing little with a lot.
Yeah,
that's a college.
Yeah, listen, Jimbo Fisher is a ongoing joke on our show.
He's a fraud.
The amount of money they paid that man. And then you get arguably like the best recruiting class of all time. And for them to be where they're at, it just shows you again, system. It doesn't matter how much talent you have. If your system is trash and you don't know how to organize and put it together, short of one transcendent player at quarterback, Jimbo Fisher has not shown us a lot. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things. Every coach hopes you get that one quarterback that makes you look good. But those quarterbacks are not a dime a dozen, and they seem to be going to all the same programs. Remember that Georgia let Justin Fields out of their QB room in place of Tyler Fromm. And Eason went to Washington, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, they were stacked with talent in that room. But there's only a few programs in the country that have rooms like that where, you're just trying to you got 3 guys who can do the job, and you're trying to make a decision which one of these guys is going to be the guy, right? This is what makes what Kirby Smart did with Stetson Bennett so impressive last year. He said the walk-on is going to be the guy.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, Ohio State. Thank you, Ohio State. We appreciate y'all.
All right.
I said to
talking about another quarterback room that had talent all over.
Joe Burrow. Somebody thought Joe Burrow was the third string quarterback.
Correct. Thank you.
Isn't that crazy? And then he goes on to have the best season of all time.
Correct.
Listen, Joey B is and as an Auburn fan, this is going to sound a little weird, but Joey B is probably my second favorite player of all time in college football since I've been watching college football. Because people are like, "Oh, it's not Bo Jackson." I was like, "Listen, guys, I was one when Bo Jackson was in Auburn, right?" And so, like, while I like hearing about Bo's exploits, I didn't get to watch it. I didn't even know football existed when I was 1 year old. But between Reggie Bush and Joe Burrow, those were two really fun guys to watch. And the argument that people make for Joe Burrow, well, look at all the talent that he played with, and I'm like, that's weak, man. Listen, those guys got a chance to be the 5-star players they were because he was dropping dimes to them every play. They weren't bailing him out. It wasn't.
He threw them open. He threw them open.
And Joe Brady had him throwing 10,000 footballs on the Ponderosa right next to the Mississippi River on that levee in like 150-degree heat. And that's what won that national championship. It was the preparation before. In fact, by the way, Burrow's going to actually be down in Baton Rouge today for the spring game, the L game, and he's going to be recruiting all the recruits coming out. The kid's phenomenal. He could run for governor and win in a landslide.
Oh my goodness! Listen, and he's already been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, listen,
could have been two.
Yeah, he's been validated. He's been validated already. And I just think, if you're building that kind of program, like Ohio State's obviously won a lot of games. So, again, talent evaluation isn't an exact science.
Yes.
I mean, who was in that QB room? Was it JT Barrett in that QB room with Joe Burrow? And I think not Cardale Jones. It was
no, he had already left.
Yeah, it was. They had another quarterback in there, and it was just amazing that they let him get out.
Braxton Miller.
Yeah,
it was Miller.
Right? Yeah. Right, Braxton Miller. So I'm just thinking, at the end of the day, stack talent, make the right decision. One thing that somebody on Harson's staff told me last year was we should have pivoted Robbie earlier, right, in a season, in Harson's last season. So we should have pivoted earlier. We stuck with Jake alone. And I was screaming it from the sideline. But it took the coaching staff until after Missouri to get there.
Yeah.
And it was tough, man. They probably cost themselves a win doing that. So who knows, man? Like I said, I think that Robbie Ashford can make the jump. I think that in the SEC these days, if you do not have dynamic quarterback play, you better be damn good at everything else.
That's right. That's
because right now they
you
are
better have
putting
a defense for the ages, which again Georgia had.
Georgia did it,
and it is an inexact science trying to predict what people are going to do. Think about being a portfolio manager, managing 50 or 100 stocks in a fund. But what I've noticed about the quarterback position, it's more valuable than I think we've ever seen it because of the complexity of a lot of the offenses. And high school quarterbacks, we had Ken Capps and Bo Carter on yesterday, the Texas duo. And they're both, Ken's the Football Writers Association of America, Bo National Football Foundation, been doing it a long time. Ken was at the Texas spring game last week, and he said, look, I'm putting to rest right now. Quinn Ewers is the starter. He even got rid of his mullet. But he said Malik is the backup. And Peyton, Arch Manning, he goes, he'll be ready, but he goes, he's nowhere even close to what Quinn Ewers is. He goes, he's got talent. He said, but that's the quarterback room at Texas. And OU, and we're trying to really build up our western flank, Mike, covering Texas and OU. A&M already there, but OU has their spring game today, and they talked about the importance of football at Oklahoma. They had one of their famous Sooners one time said, our dream and our goal is to one day have a president of the university that the football program can be proud of.
Right.
So, that's it's just unbelievable. I don't think I want to get into them real quick, Mike. I love having you on here with us because this is great. As long as you want to stay, because we're going to have Buddy Martin from GatorBaitMedia.com on in the second half, and you're welcome to stay with Doug and Frank and me. I know Frank's got to jump out at the top of the hour, but stay as long as you want. But we normally don't keep you this long, but it's a Saturday roundtable. But OU and Texas, I don't think are going to have that long or painful of a learning curve. They've got everything you need, but now they can sell, go to the defensive line in the SEC, look at the NFL picks. I think it's going to be fun having them in the league. It's going to be more chaotic, but it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of great road trips.
I'll say this because I got to hop out at the time. I'm covering baseball today. So I got to go get ready. But I'll tell you this about Oklahoma and Texas. The name of the game is the exact same, right? It's going to be about coaching when those guys come to the league. So Venables didn't exactly carry over what Lincoln Riley was doing. They hired a defensive coach.
Yeah.
And they lost their quarterback. And, it's only going to get tougher for him coming to this league, right?
Hey,
so,
Rob, real quick before Mike takes off. Mike, one in the same, you in 2004, am I right? You created the gladiator-themed video for that team. And I think I would hold that that was cause and effect in that team going undefeated.
You know what?
Hey.
I like to say that it was borderline prophetic. And so if you haven't seen it, it's called Auburn Will Rise on YouTube. And this was when YouTube was just becoming a thing. So it's like really low res. But a friend of mine composed the music and gave it to me to use. And I'll tell you, that offseason when Ronnie and Cadillac made the decision to come back, it was, they were jumping for joy in that athletic department because everyone felt like at least one of them is gone, but they could lose both of them. They could have lost both of them. Right. And they both came back and somehow both went in the top 5 of the draft. I recently interviewed Cadillac on the On to Victory podcast with Jason Campbell. We talked a little bit about what that team was like. Ronnie Browne has come on our show. He's a great guy.
Two quality guys. Two absolute
really are.
quality guys. Great guys, both of them.
Hey, Mike, we're about to take a break. When we come back, we'll have about 2 minutes. And I want you, when we come back, just to sign out, tell people how they can follow you, and we'll let you go. But I love going up to the Guthrie's on Glendine Shopping Center. There's the life size of Cadillac and Ronnie Browne at the Guthrie's Chicken Fingers. But the coolest thing, my friend Mark Para played on that team 99 through 03. And Mike, he came to work with us at Morgan Keegan in 04. And Tommy Tuberville was in Memphis that night to the Touchdown Club. And he goes, I told him, I said, Mark Para interviewed with my manager today. And he said, hey, I met one of your guys. He goes, little guy. I said, who? He goes, Mark Para. I said, God, he's like 6'5", 320, but he had a lot of fun playing on that offensive line with that team. And the year after he leaves, they go undefeated. But we're going to be right back so Mike can tell people how they can follow him. We're going to take about a 20-second break to keep on schedule. More in a moment. Got the exit strategy here. I know, Mike, thank you. My phone's blowing up, people going, man, you got to get him back on here more often with us. But we will definitely do that with Doug and Frank and all of us on here. But Mike, first off, thank you so much for taking time.
No problem.
I'm so glad you're doing well. You're in our prayers. So many people care about you. And there's a lot of guys that cover Auburn in different schools that we bring on here. And we just really appreciate it. So let people know how they can keep up with you. And if we get a chance on the way back from Atlanta this week, I'd love to stop off in Columbus and meet you for lunch. And Shoney's going, you got to go meet Mike G. Take that guy to lunch. I love him. And I can sit where the bricks are, but tell people how they can follow you. And we really appreciate it.
Just check us out on YouTube. We're the War Report on every social media platform. We've got a lot of interesting off-season content coming. So it'll be a ton of interviews, interviews with players, interviews with coaches. And we're going to have some former players on to talk about what the off-season is like and what these players need to do to prepare for the fall. This is a really important time that the players spend on their own. And we're going to bring in some guys who have some experience in that to talk to fans about how this time is spent and how these guys can get ready to start come fall.
Great stuff,
Hey,
Mike.
Yeah, Mike, do you like going to that chili Thai restaurant downtown Columbus by the river?
I have not been there yet. No, I've not.
It's a cool story. It's a guy, I believe he's from Afghanistan, came to America, fought in our military, and I believe he passed away a couple of years ago. It's the best Thai restaurant I've ever been to in my life. And also there's a Jamaican restaurant. I saw it on True South. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Up by Fort Benning?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah. All right, yep. Maybe we can go there. I'm going to call you today, though, after the show. But thank you so much for being on here with us. Absolutely love it. It's not the War Report, as they say over in East Tennessee. It's the War Report, and we had a wonderful rapport with Mike G from the War Report.
Nice talking to you, Mike.
Take care, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, Rob, we made Audrey mad talking about East Tennessee.
Hey, she's from Collierville, and cousin Mark.
That was a great segment with Mike.
That is
unbelievable.
He's fantastic, and cousin Mark Ham, Audrey's cousin, lives up in Knoxville. They're all from Collierville, which is Memphis, Shelby County. But he said up here, the mullet and curl, they have competitive curling up there in East Tennessee. And yeah, it's you got to work sometimes. The mountain grammar, I love watching those things on YouTube about mountain people. They have their own dialect.
Oh yeah.
Like they say they'll have a word for something that is the English language is one thing, and they'll call it a pode, and you're like, a what? So there's a whole language of mountain people. Now you got to get into deep Appalachia to get that. Yeah. Now you go north of you, Frank, you might see some of it up. No, hey, how about Helen, Georgia? Is that not one of the coolest?
About 30 minutes as the crow flies is where they film Deliverance.
Yeah, it's
in backwoods, brother.
Yeah, and you know what? If you ever get bored and want to see something cool, go over to Delano. Yeah, Doolin banjo.
Banjos. Go south.
Yeah, they sell that T-shirt up on the Spring River. I hear banjos playing, boys. Where are we?
That's right.
Hey, Burt Reynolds told a story one time. He came to the Orpheum, and I've been to the movies with my dad maybe half a dozen times in my life, and he falls asleep every time. But we went there. It was the life of Burt Reynolds, as only Burt Reynolds could tell it, on the stage of the Orpheum Theater in Memphis.
I bet it was cool.
Absolutely spectacular. And Margaret's in the stage. Oh, you wouldn't believe he was there.
Dude,
he told a story about Deliverance. He said, it took us about 11 weeks to film that movie. And when we went up there in North Georgia to Cleveland or Ellijay, I think it was one of those towns, on the Chattooga River, Bull Sloughs is like a class 4, maybe even a 5 on the rapid scale. And he said, it wasn't hard to find extras for the movie. It was just the locals, And he
Correct,
said, that kid that played the banjo, he goes, they ran someone else's arm through his sleeve. That's how they did that.
Yeah.
He said he was, severely challenged mentally, and very slow. And he goes, when we were leaving, Ned Beatty and I were getting in the station wagon. But anyway, we got in the station wagon. And we're leaving, and that kid comes running over, pounding on the window, almost broke the glass. And I said to the driver, I said, stop. He's probably wanting an autograph. He had me roll the old window down. Remember the old days when you rolled That kid comes up there with that banjo, looks at Burt Reynolds, and Burt Reynolds looks at him, and he goes, and it played the entire song by himself. Burt Reynolds broke into tears.
Wow.
So he
didn't actually play it on screen, but picked it up.
He picked it up.
He was a savant.
Wow.
He was a savant.
That's cool.
He was a savant, yes. And I deal with savants for a living because my dad calls me an idiot savant, but I cannot play the banjo. Although Frank Duffy one time played warm up for Led Zeppelin at Oak Mountain Amphitheater. Is that true?
I did play that bagpipe for y'all at the St. Patrick's Day parade.
You did. That was wonderful. Doug Dean, are you at the lake, Doug?
No, I'm in Birmingham. I've got a honeydew list that will keep me pretty busy today. And
do
as you
them
know,
now so that we're free in the fall.
as you both know, but I'm it's fun, but it's work involved. But last Sunday was the baby shower for Allison. She's due June 6th, and in a couple of weeks another baby shower for Lauren, who's due July 10th, and they're both doing great.
I love the picture of them together. That was really cool.
We never had that conversation, Duffy.
I saw that. Yeah, we're
cool.
leaving right after the show to go to Atlanta for a baptism christening tomorrow for Chandler Elizabeth, Mallory's daughter.
Awesome.
That was a great picture, Doug.
That was a great picture.
Cadillac.
I promised I would not share, so I hope they're not tuned in.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, Cadillac Williams, that 4 weeks, man, he just opened up. He's the
really
real
did.
deal.
That was a magical run for those games. It really was.
Meaningless unless you're an Auburn person.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this now, Frank and Doug. College, you got the L game in Baton Rouge today. You got the A-Day game in Tuscaloosa. I do like this idea, but Doug Barfield brought it up April 1980. Why can't we play teams that we don't normally play? Back then it was for Auburn, Kentucky, LSU, and Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a lot of fun. It'd be a tailgate opportunity. But do you want to keep it strictly in state? Because, look, you want to help the schools in your state. And I think it'd be fun either way. But I think it would make the spring games a little more exciting and interesting.
These coaches, most of them, if not all, in the SEC, these coaches are not going to want to run the risk of losing their A-Day game.
But it's kind of, by the way, it's kind of funny. LSU, we as crazy as we are in the fall and as passionate we are in Phil Tiger Stadium and as loud as we are, we've really never gravitated to the spring game. It's insane. We might get 30,000 people out there, 35,000. I mean, here it was G-Day when Kirby first got to Georgia. He said, I want 92,000. And he got 92K. It was. We've never, for whatever reason, LSU's never been a big spring game, supporter. I mean, we monitor it, we watch it.
Because you're smart fans.
Yeah, it's never been a big deal. I think all the festivals and the crawfish boil. And by the way, after the spring game, more important is these recruits being able to sit down at the world's largest crawfish boil, which they have for the players and their families and the recruits and their families. And that's what gives them that sense of Louisiana and our culture and our life down here. One of the best things that we do in recruiting is the spring game crawfish boil. And it is always off the charts.
Mud bugs.
Yeah, there will be no sitting down at a crawfish boil. No. I go to a lot of them. It's standing around, and please don't wipe your eyes with your hand.
And any offensive linemen that have come down from Pennsylvania or Michigan have to be helped on how to peel them.
It almost you reminded me, Rob, about years ago. I put away an obscene amount of crawfish and got home. I was wearing contact lenses. You know where this is going. And I had to take them out and put them back in. That set me free. Your eyeballs on fire.
I went down to Louisiana this week. I went down to go to the Zurich, which is a great golf tournament. We have a buddy of mine is one of the directors, and we always get to sit in the 18th hospitality tent, which is some of the world famous food. Like you got Galatoire's is in there, and Dominica, and Mr. B's. I mean, that's where the food is catered from, right? Is all of our great restaurants. And I happened to be down there, and I wish I could have stayed yesterday. I had to come back yesterday morning because a buddy of mine, he owns a huge, big amount of crawfish ponds near Abbeville. So every year he flies. They got tons of land, so they fly kind of like our buddies in Lake Chuck, right? So at Cherry Farm, so they fly in their plane from New Orleans to go to Abbeville, which is probably like 20 minutes up and down, to get the huge mud bugs, like the premium ones, on his own farms they'll bring back like 6 or 7 sacks in this plane. And they had their crawfish boil yesterday, and it was killing me not to be there. And so I'm getting pictures. Dude, they look like lobsters. They were so freaking big. So, it was killing me, man. So I'm sorry not to be in Louisiana today, back up in Georgia. But we're going in on Tuesday because Jazz Fest is this upcoming weekend.
Got it. You know, I tell you what, Frank and Doug, you've been there to Mother's Deli on Poydras Street in New Orleans.
Excellent.
But you know what the tough is? The crawfish and shrimp etouffee omelet, they're always out of one of the two if you don't get there when they open. But the funniest thing is if you go in there and ask those women behind the counter with the big meat cleavers just chopping and chopping and chopping, you get a 30 and say, it's got debris on it. And one time I said, what's debris? And she goes, it's debris. And I said, what? It's debris. Do you want one or not? I'm like, okay, I'll take one.
Hey, it's like the soup Nazi. Don't be asking questions if you want.
God help you. Hey, you know what?
I've told Duff of my time. Sorry if I walked on you, Rob.
No.
I told Duff over and over that if I should ever have reason to either be shown the door by the Auburn family or depart on my own,
We're the second choice.
If Harston had stayed 2 or 3 more years, that would have been a consideration. But I would humbly approach the LSU nation and see if they would adopt a son from Alabama.
Hey, come on.
But
hey, look, you better come this fall. Don't forget, Bengal 1.
Oh, I'm there.
I've
I'm
got
there,
my
I promise you.
gumbo. Dude, I'm ready to go.
But the one big reason, you could talk about 100 of them besides the culture of LSU or Louisiana people in general, and it's really like 5 or 6 cultures in that great state. But
Okay.
My favorite may be whether you're in Baton Rouge or you can find them in NOLA too, but find a bar and restaurant that has a Zydeco or a Cajun dancing band. Oh my goodness. I mean, whether you can pull that off yourself or not, it's just an absolute party. And just it's something most people that come from out of state in Louisiana haven't experienced anywhere else.
My buddy Scott Alexander, I do his television show, like 2 or 3 times every football season. He's good buddies with Rockin' Dopesy, who is like the king of Zydeco. And so he was on his show this past Tuesday, right? So talking about Zydeco and everything, but it's the whole thing. It's the music with the crawfish, with the festival season. Jazz Fest, let me tell you, Mardi Gras is fun. Jazz Fest is even better because it's out near the fairgrounds where we race our horses. Once the fairgrounds, and by the way, 2 weeks I'm going to be up in the Derby, and on Saturday morning before we go over to Churchill, Rob, I'm going to try and do the first hour of that 8 o'clock hour.
We'll get Dave Tompkins on with us. Yeah,
sure
Dave,
Mr.
In
Derby. Fact, Dave and I hopefully will get on next week, the week before, like 7 days before, to even talk about it as well. But when I tell you, man, it is a phenomenal time with Jazz Fest. Yes, Mardi Gras is what everybody knows about, but a lot of tourists come for Mardi Gras. You really want to get to know the locals, come for Jazz Fest. And I missed it this year. It was last weekend. I had to stay up here in Georgia. We had some honeydews to do. But the French Quarter Festival, which is 2 weeks before Jazz Fest, is phenomenal because it's free, but it's all throughout the French Quarter. You don't have to schlep all the way over to the fairgrounds to go to it. It's like 9 different stages. So can't go wrong. But this is as fun as fall is for football with Saints and Tigers, and now even Tulane. Yeah, spring is really the time to be in Louisiana. It's from the food to the festivals to the music. It's an awesome time.
No, it is. And when you come in from Memphis on I-55 before you cross over Lake Pontchartrain on the north, Mittendorf's restaurant,
big
right
there on the water, there on the water.
And, but like the crawfish boils, there are so many of them. We were in Wilson, Arkansas last Saturday. God, there were a ton of people there on Cortez Kennedy Avenue. Former great Miami player is from Wilson, Arkansas. And, the cool thing is when I'm with Frank, my dad, 4 weeks before he was going to enroll at LSU as a preferred walk-on field goal kicker, a slot opened up in the School of Architecture at Auburn. That's the only thing that kept me from being, and as crazy as I am about Auburn and all, I would have been right there with Frank in the asylum because I grew up listening to WWL 870 out of New Orleans. the golden pipes of John Ferguson.
Absolutely.
and Hap Glaudy's King Edward cigar time is 6:00. Take a look at the Pontchartrain Causeway traffic with our good reporter Hokie Gajon Broussard. I mean, you can't. And
Central Casting.
Nicky Savoy was a tight end there, and he worked on the trading desk down there for Morgan Keegan for a long time.
He was a tough little tight end. He was.
So Jacob Hester's a great hybrid player for y'all too.
Jacob Hester is why we got a national championship in 2007 and kept Georgia out of it. Georgia might have had another. Rick might still be there. We probably would have done ourselves a favor to let him win that when we wouldn't have gotten stuck with Kirby. But no, Jacob Hester on that drive against Florida, when Les Miles rolled the dice and went for it on 4 fourth downs on that one drive, Jacob Hester was impaling Florida linebackers left and right. That's why we won a national championship. We don't beat Florida, we never make it.
Duff, that's when occasionally Les Miles' limited mental faculties worked to his advantage.
Well, that was the year we beat y'all at 1 second left, insanely throwing the ball when the whole damn clock could have run out.
Ill-advised throw, and it worked, and that's what
horrible.
Remember the receiver, Demetrius Byrd from Miami, junior college transfer. My son Wilson cried for 2 hours after that game.
Hey, and if it wouldn't have been for clock keeper Boudreaux hurrying up and stopping it, if that 1 second would have clicked off, they'd have stoned him to death. He wouldn't have gotten out of the friggin' Tiger Stadium if he'd have done that.
Well, Auburn fans would have protected him, though, Frank.
But Frank, we settled the score when it was the game. It was loser leaves town. Edo and Gus Malzahn on that weird. Did Auburn get the playoff or not?
Oh, that was so bad.
I was sitting right up there. I was sitting up there right in my usual spot.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Hey, I got to run.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Buddy Martin is trying to get Sarah to ring him up. Andy Griffith on in the other room. Doug, it's the back-to-back episodes of when Mr. Darling and those 4 sons of his came to town looking for a wife. And it ain't going to take long. The courtship won't take more than a couple of days, and the deal will be done. And Andy goes, hold on a second. So now, Jeff.
Did you fire Duffy?
No, Duffy had to go. He was supposed to leave at the top of right there at the end of the first hour, but he stayed on a little bit longer. But
I'm down to about 10 minutes myself.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing. I know y'all got – is it turkey season? How's it going there in Alabama so far?
And I'm the wrong one to ask other than hearing from my hunting club members. It's been an average year in terms of the birds cooperating at daybreak, gobbling so you can locate them. And so a good year, I haven't heard anybody saying it was spectacular, but I think the great wild turkey is making, and I mean the bird, not the whiskey, is making a comeback in Alabama.
Yeah. Well, Mark Ham and Tom Rainey and guys are they're out there turkey hunting in Montana right now, going after the big Merriams in Montana off the grid, no cell phone, nothing, and going in there. And a couple of years ago, my son Wilson and John Quincy Adams, Wilson and John Quincy Adams, one of his fraternity brothers, they went out to Yellowstone. They went up to Mount Rushmore, all out in that area turkey hunting. They didn't kill one. They saw, they heard, but they never saw them. But you get that.
That's it. Not bad.
I love.
Can we talk actual ball?
Yeah, we're gonna talk turkey ball right now. But I tell you what, that discussion yesterday was a lot of fun with Ken Capps and Bo Carter and William Halliday on there about Texas. OU's got their spring game today. Doug, I don't see them going into an abyss. I think Brent Venables, he didn't get a lobotomy. He can coach. I just think that Brent, got to remember what Lincoln Riley took 22 players with him to Southern Cal, including Caleb Williams.
I think it works both, this forecasting, and we all tend to think linear, that Oklahoma has always been on this trajectory, and the floor for them was 10 wins almost any given year. But when you introduce what I'll call disruption, even if you hire a great head coach, it's probably a tired example, but it bears discussing or mentioning once in a while. But even the great Nick Saban, the GOAT, his first year had trouble with Louisiana Monroe, and that there was reason to panic. Saban wasn't panicking; he knew what he was building. So I look at Oklahoma. I have to say I don't know for sure if Venables will prove that he's head coaching material at an elite level. But Oklahoma has all the resources. Ironically, even though the schedule will get tougher, I think it helps Venables, it helps Oklahoma to come into the Southeastern Conference at the same time that you don't have to be undefeated. They're going to have a 12-team playoff before we know it. So I'm bullish. You're the investor and a financial advisor, Rob, but I'm very bullish on both Texas and OU, especially not necessarily this season, but especially when they come into the SEC.
Yeah, I am too. And that's something with Anwar Richardson. We talked with him last week from orangebloods.com. He covers Texas and said, hey, tell those defensive linemen, you don't have to go to the Big 12 and chase quarterbacks for these 45-42 Arena Football League type scores. Come to the SEC. Can you be the next Derek Browne? Can you be the next Jalen Carter? Can you be the next Marcus Spears? Or
can you be the next Buddy Martin?
Yeah, the next Buddy Martin. And right now, from Ocala, Florida, the junior right-hander throwing smoke over the water at 97 miles an hour. Buddy, how are you?
You don't want to be me right now, okay? You just want to be me.
IT problems?
Oh, no, more than that. But anyway, yeah. Jess, sorry about that. I was asked to log in. First time I ever got that. But okay, we're here. The good news is I survived an accident last night in the car with my wife, which was a kind of harrowing experience. Not the least of which trying to deal with insurance companies and getting calls at 3 o'clock in the morning about your car, which you left on the side of the road when they said they were coming to pick it up 8 hours ago. But that's neither here nor there. It's a beautiful Saturday in Florida. It's great sports time. We got Derby coming up. Heard you guys talking a little bit. Hi, Doug. How you doing? Hi, Rob. Sorry I'm late for the party. When I logged on this morning, I couldn't get anything. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm here, and I'm here to tell you about an interesting experience I have not even shared with my own audience yet. If you guys know about artificial intelligence, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I worry about it.
Yeah, well, it's the evil empire. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm about to put you on hold 1 second while I take this call. Hold on.
Well, Doug, that's the wild world we live in. Artificial intelligence. You're starting to see more and more of it. It's like in architecture when you had the CADs, computer-assisted drawings. Still can't beat an architect. Still can't indicate, human behavior is still ultimately going to win out.
You hope. Some of what I read, I think it's not nutty to say we need to order airstrikes on some of these Google and other servers, non-lethal to human beings. But I asked, just to put it to the test, I asked my AI app, who should Hugh Freeze bring in out of the transfer portal? And the answer I got was Bo Nix has announced that he's transferring from Oregon, which, by the way, is a lie. You may have heard the Elon Musk interview on Fox, and he said that one of the big problems with AI, and they can't explain it, is hallucinations. These AI, the intelligence confidently lie. And if you tell, politicians are the best at that. If you lie with and you seem confident and bold about it, people will buy it, but it's still a lie.
Wow. It is, Doug, that's interesting. And I've been watching it like you have. I still think that, in the market, when people try to predict, back in the late 90s, when the market was rolling and a lot of the tech stocks were booming, a lot of the, talking heads and pundits on TV would say, well, anybody can pick stocks in this market. Well, it's not that easy. And what reality is, when you are not using real money, you behave differently. When you're using real money and your own real money and your client's real money to buy these investments, I do the due diligence, and my team does an incredible job of due diligence. You take a list. Like if you're deciding on a job, should I take it or not? You take out a legal pad. On the left side, why I stay. On the right, why I go. If one column outweighs the other significantly, that's where you got to go, isn't it? That's artificial intelligence.
So you're not still buying Dutch tulip bulbs, are you, right?
I do. I'll tell you one thing. Got a great one from a client of mine the other day. Just made total sense. Clorox. It's like everybody wants clean clothes. It's like when I offer a water and sewer revenue bond to a client, it's like, hey, everybody wants to flush the toilet, don't they? I think.
Recession proof. Hey, I want to this would be a good fodder before I cut out when Buddy comes back in. I'm intrigued by on the offensive side of the ball this year. And when I make this forecast, it's sure to doom it to being the opposite. But I look down the league and I don't see, we might see one by October, but I can't say that I see a proven elite quarterback, not the likes of Bryce Young. And in a very different way, Stetson Bennett, they were not going to try to throw the ball 40 times with the offensive line and backs they had. They were going to play to their defense. My point being, looks to me like Kirby and Saban are going retro back to what got them there, got Saban there in the early days, which is more ground and pound. They'll still go play action, and there might be a game that they win 48-45, but I think you're going to see scoring settle down a little bit in favor of running game, controlling it, protecting your defense. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think we are going back retro. And Buddy,
that's what Florida's doing. That's what Florida's doing. Exactly. Yeah.
Pick up on that, Buddy. Look, thank God you're okay.
I'm sorry. That was my guy in my car. I had to.
No problem.
Hey, man, we totally.
It might have been total. That's what the car could have been total. So I had to figure all that out.
Just glad you're okay, buddy.
Listen, I'm blessed. I feel wonderful this morning. Yeah. But that what you said, Doug. We'll get back to artificial intelligence another time. But anyway, the fact is that right now is before our very eyes. If you get granular and stare at it and you see what Billy Donovan, I'm going to say Billy Donovan the rest of my life. Billy Napier is doing, well, you can't help it. 12 years of it, you get hard to get out of your brain. But Billy Napier is a smart guy, but it's like people who, you guys know cooking, who slow cook. When you slow cook, it ain't very popular with the people who are hungry, right? And you have to have patience. And Billy Napier is not Donovan. Billy Napier is a slow cooker, and this is my analyzation of him, studying what I can, is that he's got a formula. He's a smart football guy. Look, he's coached with Dabo. He's coached with with Nick. And he's coached some really great minds. He has figured out that with a bad defense and a horrible third down defense, by the way, and the issues of personnel and trying to catch up with the big guys like Georgia and Alabama and even Texas A&M, so and so, he's got to figure it different. He's going to run the football. Okay, that's what he's doing. He's got a bunch of offensive linemen he's recruited hard. Rob Sale, formerly the offensive line coach of the Giants, who also coached at Napier at Louisiana. They're bringing in big body guys, and they're scouring the country for them. They got two really good running backs, and they got a quarterback who can't throw it too well, but he can hand it off, and Graham Mertz, he's played 30 games. We'll see how he tests out. And now he's got to rebuild and reconstruct the defense. He got a really smart defensive coordinator in Austin Armstrong, 29 years old, the hottest guys in the country, who formerly coached with him at Louisiana, was hired by Nick Saban, and he got him away to be his DC, and then he took Corey Raymond. If you guys know SEC football, he built DBU at LSU, who was just a coach that was a co-coordinator last year, coached the corners, and now he's coaching the whole secondary because Tony was the DC, is gone. So he's taken over. They hired Billy Gonzalez back, third trip for him, really one of the premier wide receiver coaches in the country, to replace the guy who left and went to Southern Cal. I forget wherever he went. So they fixed their staff. They like their energy. Their defense is flying around all of a sudden. They might even be able to stop people on third down, but they will be able to keep the ball. And Billy believes in what the stats tell him is that if you go for it on fourth time, you make it 60% of the time. So they'll go for it on fourth down. They'll run the football. They'll play cock. And now with the new rules, as I understand, that's going to be a big thing because the clock doesn't stop on first downs. Suddenly, clock becomes a big deal. So you're right, what you were saying. You want to control the game as best you can with however you can. Florida is known for its great passing. I'm doing a story now on the greatest passes, completions in the history of Florida, and they have a history of it since Spurrier came along. But the new look's going to be more balanced and more toward running the ball and playing defense, like you said, old school.
And buddy, that's a great take. But what's going to be ironic about that development, and I wish Napier success, since to my knowledge, Auburn doesn't play Florida regular season.
I wish they did.
Year. But what's going to be ironic is when Anthony Richardson is unexpectedly a high draft and ends up lighting it up in the NFL throwing the ball.
Well, that was my column today. Basically, that it's a happy, sad day to see him, local kid right there in Gainesville from East Side, to be able to burst onto the scene. He won't be the highest draft choice probably because Spurrier was number 3 player taken, but he'll be if top 15, maybe top 10, be worth about $25 to $30 million. And he has broken all the records of the combines. You guys know, broke them all.
Yeah.
And I wrote this when I first saw him, the greatest prospect potentially I ever saw play quarterback in Florida in the last 55 years. Okay,
high reward.
But well, I mean, but they got to fix him. And it's like this. There are some coaches who say, "I can fix that guy. Let's get him. Let's trade up and go get him because he has got the measurables off the charts. And he's a really good kid. And by the way, he's pretty smart. He's a pretty smart guy. A B student and a good kid. He made one mistake. He got a new Dodge Charger and got to going too fast on 2 o'clock in the morning on the road and got nailed for a speeding ticket. And he immediately went in and traded it in for a Toyota. Which I like. So anyway, so Richardson's really something. I mean, and I wrote about it, why it's a happy, sad day. It's happy and glad for him, one of our own, go in there and do that, make it. But it's sad that he can never realize his potential right here in a place where he grew up loving the Gators and played with it. What if they had him on, another team that had all the pieces? What could he have done there? Who knows what that guy would have done?
I can tell you this. Don't you guys agree Heupel could do something with him?
Yeah, I think he could. And that's a good point because I think we have to really know more about Billy and his ability to coach offense. And, he likes to run the ball. And I've had people say to me, well, who is the quarterback coach of Florida? Right? The people who are close to the program, Well, they have a guy. I guess his name is O'Hara, but I don't know what he does. And the people, they don't know what he does. And Billy really is the quarterback coach, but he's not the quarterback coach. And I'll just say this. I hate to sound like I'm going back to Spurrier all the time, but Spurrier, he spent so much time with his quarterbacks. He had them throw. He was with them, hands on them all the time. I mean, he had a thing where in South Carolina where they always had 8 basketballs laying against the gym wall. And when the quarterbacks came through, they were supposed to stop and do 10 passes off the brick walls and to strengthen their wrists. That's what he did. Then one day he found they weren't doing it, and he thought, well, they don't mind me anymore. I guess they need to get out coaching. But he had all kind of drills. He was always throwing, practicing. He was a stickler for every little detail. He coached the crap out of the quarterbacks.
Hey, Rob, Did I walk on you, buddy? Finish that thought.
No, anyway.
I was just going to say before I cut out, I wish I could stick around to the bitter end with Bud, the great Buddy Martin. But if Butch was listening, only Auburn and Mississippi State would bring the two worst pitching staffs so far this season and have a 2-1 game last night. Auburn prevailing, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Would that Florida could get that in South Carolina? We'd take that 2-1 game. I mean,
yeah.
Either end of it, by the way. So,
Wait, we're going to take a quick break here. Doug, look, awesome having you on. We got to get you on every chance we can. Love this stuff. We're going to take a quick break. We'll close out the last segment with Buddy Martin. Thank God you and your wife are okay from your accident last night. And, man, tell you what, never miss an opportunity to be grateful for what you got. We'll be back with more Sidelines in about 30 seconds.
See you.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Buddy Martin here on this Saturday roundtable. I'm telling you what, it is fun. And I think what we're starting to see is, Buddy, more and more teams. I really believe we're going to see more and more teams go back to the basics in a lot of ways. In fact, when a team used to struggle, what a lot of coaches would do is say, we're going to run the ball Saturday. We're going to run it 50 or 60 times. We're going to get that toughness back on this team. And they'd go out and they'd win 14-10. And 30 or 40 years ago, you'd be happy. I love what you and Franz Beard put out on GatorBetMedia.com. And then you introduced us to Ben Troop. We have y'all on every week throughout the week. You learn so much. But Florida is no different. The culture, it's as Southern and, grassroots as it gets. People think Florida, they're thinking Miami, South Beach. Florida, when I drive through Florida, Central Florida, it's cattle farms, orange groves, it's agriculture. They want to win just like everybody else does. And this stuff is cyclical. But Frank Duffy pointed out in the first part of the show, this is a pivotal year for Florida. But And I agree with that. Every year is at this level. But I like what you said about if you ever slow cook, indirect heat, just take your time, like cooking. MJ has 8 butts on the smoker right now. Been going all night. We're taking them over there after the show. He is to Wynne, Arkansas, to help the Darlene and Walter Hill, the folks that are recovering from the tornado and just they're getting better every day. But you got to go low and slow. If you try to rush that stuff, it doesn't work. I've never heard someone say that when applying to football, but let's pick back up on that theme. I'm fired up about it.
Well, I mean, as you say, cyclical, but here's the thing about Noah, and I've favored the forward pass. I've always liked that offense. So ever since it was brought into Florida, really starting with Ray Graves because they threw the ball, because Bob Woodruff, when he coached there, basically threw the ball about 3 times a game and punted on 3rd down. That's what I grew up with, okay? All the old Tennessee-style football. So that's where he played for Neyland and Tennessee. That's what we grew up with. And Florida fans, and I was in school, they finally had enough of it. They had enough of it because you can't just do nothing but run the ball. And so Ray Graves brought in Pepper Rogers, and they started throwing the ball around a little bit. Yeah. And then Spurrier came along, and a guy named Fred Pankos, used to be coach at Memphis, used to be coach at
Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt, good friend of mine. Fred was on the staff with Ray Graves when he came in there, and Spurrier had him a little bit, but Spurrier might have most of his own offense, and then Fred Pankos brought in the great John Reeves and put in a new passing offense to Carlos Alvarez, and they threw the crap out of the ball, and it was heaven, unbelievable. But if you can run the football, you dictate the game.
Yeah,
you call the shots, because if you can't stop somebody on third down, they're going to go up and down the field on you eventually. Yeah. It's going to take a little longer. It's going to be 21-14 and not 38-31. And that's how it is. And so Spurrier never worried about time of possession back in the day, but he changed his philosophy a little bit at South Carolina, started to run the ball more. So we don't probably pay much attention as we should. Who among us in the media looks at blocking schemes or whatever, trying to figure that out. So it seems like you're right. It seems like that is a trend. You say Hugh Freeze is doing that at Auburn. It's worked over the years for Auburn. Auburn, I remember all the great running backs from Tucker Frederickson on down that Auburn had, always somebody. So SEC used to be a predominant, funny part about it was they were predominantly a running team, and who changed it? Spurrier. Spurrier changed it when he went to Florida in 1990. Everything changed in the whole league. So different.
Yeah, and it was when you think back, and I think about the great running backs. I still to this day,
Jackson, and
he's a great one, no question. But the greatest breakaway threat to go 60, 70, 80 yards at any moment, still, in my opinion, is James Brooks out of Warner Robins, Georgia. He was 5'9", 167 pounds. He left, he probably weighed 185, but I mean, and the most underrated run in James Brooks's career was a 23-yard touchdown run at Grove Stadium at Wake Forest when Auburn lost 42-38 in 1979. I'm with you. And I think about those Gator running backs. Fred Taylor.
Emmett Smith. Let's go back to him, man. All-time leading rusher in the NFL.
Escambia County.
Yeah. So you go through all those, and let's not forget the great Herschel, naturally. Okay.
Yeah. But when I look at Florida, I'll tell you there's two. Fred Taylor out of Belglade, out of the Muck. Yeah. And we ain't talked about the Muck lately. But then there was one other running back out of Pembroke Pines, Florida, that Florida had. And all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank, which – he was there 93, 94, 95.
James.
And I'm trying
to think. Well, hey, they had a couple. Neil Anderson. They had two really good ones under Galen Hall. Yeah. And I have to go back over. I don't have it in front of me. I can't remember. But the point is, there have always been good ones in the SEC. I mean, you can go back to Georgia and Frankie Sinkwich and whatever. Look at the great Tennessee running backs and so on. There's always been great running backs. Run the ball and play defense. That was the formula in the SEC. That's what it was all about. So it's obviously changed a little bit now. And now it's the athletic quarterbacks. So, you got to have the athletic quarterbacks, RPOs, and all those guys. There's some great ones coming out. I watched a really good special. Have you watched the thing with the Mannings on the You're on the Clock? Have you seen that yet?
No.
Oh, man, that's good stuff. That's all about the Manning passing camp. Last night they had all the it's really good.
What network's that on?
It's on ESPN, and I'm not a huge fan of ESPN's right now, but this is good. It's called On the Clock, and it takes you. The Mannings are in there. They gave you the stuff at the camp. They had Levis on last night in depth. They showed. I mean, it's just inside stuff you would love. So check it out. On the Clock, it's called, and it's really good. So
I'll definitely watch it. I think about the Gator running backs, though, but that's when Steve Spurrier really changed, because 90 through and when he brought in Bob Stoops in 96 as defensive coordinator.
Right.
And Florida really ran the ball a lot more than people gave him credit for, but they started running the ball later on more in the fourth quarter. They were shut teams down.
Second half, it always, you know why? Because Spurrier had a hard time holding leads his second year there. He was on a plane with Bo Schembechler one time, and they were talking. And he said, "Coach, you got to run the football. You got to learn to control the clock." And he went back and he changed it, and he started. And what he would do is he try to get on you on top of you early, 3 or 4 touchdowns ahead, and then run the football in the second half. If you look at his play calling and his plays, he was 50-50. People would never believe that. He was balanced 50-50 because he ran the ball so much in the second half. He did it in South Carolina pretty well also. But no, there's some great ones out there. Trying to think who you're thinking of here. Let me see if I can look it up. Yeah, so I think it's coming back around defense, and we'll see with the defense because it's just out of control with the amount of points being scored and trying to keep up. And you play these shootouts, it's who has the ball last, right?
Yeah,
that's who it is. So you're thinking about Ernest Graham. Let's see,
Eric Rett.
Eric Rett. Well, he was Spurrier's guy. Yeah. He should. Yeah, that's who it was, and he should be in the Hall of Fame at Florida because he had three years of 1,000 yards. Three, and he should have had the fourth one. But yeah, Eric Rett was Spurrier's guy. He ran that draw play, and you couldn't stop him. He was trim. So anyway, so it's defense. I think I don't know if we'll ever see like it was, but ultimately, if the offense starts running the ball, more controlling the game, the defense then will start getting better.
Yeah,
and you'll see more things. You have all these weird defenses, these 2-8-3s, or these crazy formations they have where they rush two guys or 3 guys and play 8 linebackers or whatever they do. So
yeah. But buddy, I want to ask you real quick. Now, you've covered so much football, and you've got such a great grasp of how the game changes. We've been here before, in the late 60s. How big a deal was it, in your opinion, the changes in the substitution rules? Because it almost, believe it or not, a lot of people thought the game had left Coach Bryant at Alabama. Remember the 68, 69, and 70. They were losing 4 and 5 games a year. Mm-hmm. Then he switched to the wishbone in the 71 season. And look what happened in the 70s. But kind of elaborate on that, because a lot of people are asking, going, why was that such a big deal? I don't really get it.
Well, the substitution rule was that they tried to put limitations on guys who were signing 150 people like Browne, naturally, getting all the players, and they can't play them all. So they limited the numbers they could put on the field. And the first guy to learn how to deal with that was Paul Diesel at LSU. He had those 3 famous units he had, where you put a team on you can't take a guy off for a while. So he had the Chinese Bandits.
Yep.
He had the white team and the go team. And then there were 3 that they played, and they made the front pages of the magazines, even Look magazine stuff back then. And of course the great Billy Cannon and so on. So then the substitution rule changed over time, and they realized they had to get free substitution, which they did. That changed things. I mean, special teams would never have been back in the day. You couldn't get them on the field for special teams. You went on the field, you had to play everything. Special teams, defense, offense, whatever it was. And so ultimately they opened it up, and they opened up other rules and allowed players to play more and more. I don't know. I don't want to see it go back to that. I like the specialization. I like the fact we get to see the skilled players doing their thing. But they're going to find a way to draw it back in. They always do. Look, I was thinking about this last night. Change. Everything is changing. And sometimes it drives us nuts as old guys. Like, what in the world are they going to do next? How am I going to keep NIL? What the hell is the NIL? How's that working? What about all this these other changes? Look at the rules changes over the weekend. There's some changes in football. They change it, but you better be ready to change. And here's the thing. It almost always has been for the better and made the game better. Once we get past the sticker shock, and realize, well, hey, there's a way to coach ball here. We can do this. We can find a way. The smart ones like Bryant adapted to it. Look at Saban. Why do you think Saban has 100 assistants? He wants as many bright young minds around him as he can, because he wants to pick from them. The great coaches, Don Shula, whoever, would say, what do you know? Tell me what you know. They want you to tell Rob, you know this. What do you think we should do here? And you pick the brains of people around you, this group thinking, you take the best of it, and you build your program. And so that's why Saban is smart. He's changed. He knows how to change. Kirby's got to go on the right way right now. But you know what? Things are going to change one day for Kirby too. You know, and look. I mean, he may end up losing some of these great players because he can't keep them all happy. And then what do you do? Then you better find another way to do it, right? And this is the smart ones. The smart ones know how to change. I mentioned Spurrier. He came in, changed the whole league with passing, but at South Carolina, started to run the ball again because he knew that's the way you had to win. So it's just a way. I mean, Hugh Freeze is a smart guy. He'll figure it out. It's really interesting. Why hasn't Jimbo been able to get it going in Texas A&M? I don't know. We called him the quarterback guru, smart guy, really can't get it going. Will he this year? Maybe he will. Why did he bring in Petrino to call plays? Now the question is, can they get along? It's like having two cooks in the kitchen. Can they really get along with each other? So it's really fascinating. Heupel's done a fantastic job. I never quite understood why more people didn't pursue him when he was in Central Florida. He obviously had good genes. Oklahoma, he knows how to throw the ball. Look what he's done with Hendon Hooker. So the coaches and the way they coach and the systems and what have you, fascinating stuff. That's why I can't wait to see what Billy Napier does, because I think he's a smart guy and a good coach. But I hope the Gator fans will be patient enough for that slow cooking to work.
Yeah, I mean, look historically, and I know it's unfair, but the expectations of fans have always been there. Yeah. But now I think the fact that coaches are paid so much money, buddy, people associate, you're getting all that money, then I want it right now. I think that's the biggest problem.
But Rob, how do you deal with it? You say, look,
I know.
Billy Napier, we gave you 100 people. That's what you asked for. We gave you a $110 million facility. We gave you quadrupled your recruiting budget. We've given all of it to you. Now you better produce, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what that comes to responsibility. And, what's that mean? Well, if he wins only 6 games this year, I don't know. Yeah. And so coaches don't have 5-6 years anymore. They got to get it turned around right now.
Yeah, they really do. And if the expectations of fans are not going anywhere, we know that. No. And at the bottom, we got a couple of minutes left, about to wrap up. But buddy, that I agree with you though. It's almost always been for the better. And we go through a learning curve, but we figure it out. And looking forward to having you back on next week as always. And again, thank God you're okay. Tell people how they can follow you, keep up with your great show, and what you're writing about on GatorBaitMedia.com. Because I can tell you, I read it, and I'm not a Florida grad. I'm an Auburn, but I love reading about Florida and all these teams. And I also love you and Franz's big picture outlook. And you've got some great writers on staff. So whoever you're a fan of, I would subscribe to GatorBaitMedia.com. You need all the information you can get.
Thank you, Rob. We like to not be quite so myopic all the time and just write about the Gators, but most of the time we do, 98% of the time.
It's called GatorBait.
Yeah, it's called GatorBait. And Franz is on it. Franz is like reading a sports page. His columns and thoughts today, he's like a vacuum cleaner. He picks up everything that happened. Everything and puts it in that column 4, 5, 6 times a week. They let me write a couple times a week. Like this past week, I wrote about I told you with Anthony Richardson and the shame he couldn't have had it all, and he may bring the Lombardi Trophy home someday. You never know about that. What's it like for a young guy with big dreams? And then we, obviously we will cover mostly football. We have some 2 very bright young interns who do great stuff on other sports, baseball, basketball, recruiting, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a new member of our cast, Alec Pete Wilbur from Tampa, really good. She really has her own podcast, but she's going to be with us on Wednesday night. She knows recruiting. Her granddaddy played at Florida back in 1950, and her husband was a punter there, and she knows her stuff. She has 2 sets of twins, by the way. She does all this and does a podcast, and she's going to be in with us. She's good. Coach Lauren Meadows, people that, on our show at 9 o'clock at night, we feature a lot of different people. GatorBaitMedia.com. Check us out. There are several kinds of plans if you want to get involved. I'm sorry we have to charge something because we've got to keep the lights on. I'd like to give it away free. But so there it is. If you're interested in gator sports particularly, you need to check out GatorbaitMedia.com.
Thank you so much. God bless you. We live in the greatest country in the world, people. We'll be back Monday. Have a great weekend. We are out of here. Okay, man. It just